Welcome to the deep dive wisdom for your day. I want you to picture something for a second.
Okay, setting the scene.
Yeah, so imagine a 30-year veteran of Univision and Televisa, right? A guy who literally architects multimedia strategies for millions across the Hispanic market.
So someone who is incredibly successful, polished.
Exactly. But he carries a very specific photo on his phone, and it's not a picture of his biggest industry award or, some red carpet gala.
Oh, really?
No, it's actually a picture of himself as a fifth grader. And in the photo, he's deeply ashamed of his crooked teeth, just pressing his lips tightly together and totally refusing to smile.
Wow. That's a really vulnerable thing to carry around every single day.
It is. And today we're exploring why clinging to your most painful, embarrassing memories might actually be like the ultimate blueprint for corporate resilience.
Yeah, and we are pulling all of this from an intensely raw and strategic interview given by Álvaro Martínez. It's from Maria Romo's Deep Dive, specifically an episode titled Arquitectura del Propósito y la Resiliencia. And what's just fascinating here is this collision, between the highly technical, high-stakes world of media strategy and the profound, often really uncomfortable reality of personal vulnerability.
The stuff we usually try to hide.
Exactly. Álvaro basically argues that the professional armor we try to wear in boardrooms is actually the exact thing that weighs us down.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the mission today is to extract his battle-tested habits, right?
The practical stuff.
We're going to figure out how to maintain a growth mindset, how to literally rewire the mechanics of your self-talk, and how to transform past failures into an unbreakable architecture for future success.
Because we aren't just looking at a media career here. We're examining the precise engineering of how a person builds internal strength out of basically scrap materials.
Scrap materials. I love that phrasing.
Well, if we analyze the concepts of scrap materials in the context of his life, we have to look at the foundation first.
Right, where he started.
Yeah, to understand the heights of a 30-year career in major network television, you literally must understand the dirt he started in. His father immigrated from Michoacan, Mexico, to the United States as a bracero at the age of 16.
And for those who don't know, the bracero program was a mid-century program that brought millions of Mexican guest workers to the U.S. for agricultural labor, right?
Exactly. And they ended up in the Central Valley of California, specifically the Fresno area.
And his parents, they did not shield him from that reality at all. I mean, Álvaro grew up working those exact same fields.
Yeah, he talks about the visceral reality of it, planting chiles and picking honeydew melons under that brutal California sun.
Which is just backbreaking work.
Oh, completely. And there's this distinct moment he recalls, receiving his very first paycheck from picking honeydews. It represented a week of such intense physical exhaustion that he actually told his father he simply did not want to go back.
I mean, I would have probably said the exact same thing. But his father didn't let him off the hook, right?
Not even a little bit. His father's response was not to accommodate that exhaustion. He insisted they return to the fields.
Wow.
Yeah, and there's a secondary moment Álvaro highlights where he actually felt physically ill while working. And the foreman's only instruction was to just step to the side, catch his breath, regain his posture, and immediately get back to the harvest.
That is intense. But I guess from a psychological standpoint, that instills a massive, just deeply ingrained work ethic.
It does. It's a harsh, visceral lesson in endurance. It strips away the modern luxury of quitting when things get uncomfortable.
The physical exhaustion of the fields was almost secondary to the psychological burden he was carrying.
Right, the stuff happening at home.
Yeah. Álvaro was a chubby kid growing up in a household with significant tension and verbal abuse. And the most damaging aspect was being frequently called a burro, a donkey.
And the clear implication there being that he was dumb, slow, incapable.
Exactly. And we really need to look at the cognitive behavioral impact of that specific label, right?
We do. Because when a 6-year-old child is repeatedly called a burro by the primary authority figures in his life, a devastating psychological process begins.
It's not just harmless name-calling.
Not at all. There's a well-documented psychological phenomenon called the golem effect. Have you heard of it?
Like the inverse of the Pygmalion effect, right?
Exactly. It dictates that low expectations placed upon an individual lead directly to a decrease in performance.
Because you just absorb it.
Right. The child internalizes the label and basically thinks, well, if my baseline identity is a burro, The application of effort is entirely useless.
So it becomes the ultimate limiting belief, just installed right at the foundational level of his identity.
Yes.
It's like a corrupted operating system. I mean, no matter what new software you try to install later in life, the foundational code is literally programmed to fail.
And the real-world manifestation of that internalized narrative was immediate for him. I mean, his grades plummeted to D's and F's.
Right, and he was eventually placed in special education classes.
Because he was functioning exactly according to the parameters of the identity that was assigned to him. He reached a point of complete mental surrender, just agreeing with the lowest possible assessment of his worth.
Which is so heartbreaking, and this is the critical juncture where most personal narratives just stall permanently, isn't it?
Unfortunately, yes. The transition out of that state requires an external intervention that violently disrupts the established pattern.
And for him, enter Miss M.A. Angelo,
Yes.
a fifth-grade teacher who fundamentally re-architected his trajectory. Because she didn't just look at the D's and F's on his report card and accept that Burrow narrative.
Right, she saw past it.
She recognized that the academic failure was a symptom, not the disease. She actually went to his house to investigate the home environment.
Which is incredible dedication.
It really is. She provided the one thing he lacked entirely: belief.
What's crucial about Miss Angelo's intervention is that it wasn't just abstract encouragement. Oh, you can do it, It manifested in a highly symbolic, tangible gesture.
Right, the school photos.
Exactly. That year, Alvaro's family did not have the financial means to pay for school photos. Every other student was participating in this standard ritual of childhood validation, and he was going to be excluded.
Which would have just been a visual, printed confirmation of his perceived lack of worth?
Exactly. But Miss Angelo saw this dynamic unfolding, reached into her own pocket, and paid for his photos.
Which brings us back to the image we started the show with, that specific fifth-grade photo. He keeps it on his phone today.
It's so powerful.
And in it, he's present in the photo, but his lips are sealed tight. He is refusing to smile to hide those crooked teeth.
Yeah.
He's physically there, but psychologically, he is doing everything possible to just minimize his footprint.
And the crazy thing is, he didn't get braces to fix those teeth until he was a full-grown adult. It was a gift from his wife and children.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that part.
Yeah. But the decision to carry that unsmiling, deeply insecure photo with him at all times, it's a masterful psychological strategy. It aligns with his core philosophy. Tu historia et tu poder. Your history is your power.
That feels entirely counterintuitive for the corporate world, though, doesn't it? I mean, we are taught to project absolute confidence.
Always. Never show weakness.
Right. If you have an embarrassing, traumatic memory of feeling worthless, conventional wisdom says you bury it. You lock it in a mental vault so it doesn't bleed into your pitch meetings.
But here's the thing. The act of repression requires an immense amount of cognitive energy. If you're constantly trying to hide your history, you are implicitly agreeing with the premise that your history is shameful.
Ah, you're giving it power.
Exactly. By bringing it into the light, by digitizing it and carrying it in his pocket, Álvaro strips the trauma of its leverage. He actively chooses to view his past not as a vulnerability, but as the exact, rigorous preparation required for his current success.
It's like carrying a compass instead of an anchor.
That's a great way to put it.
He isn't dragging the weight of the Burrow label around his neck. He is using that specific coordinate to measure his current trajectory. When he's faced with a massive, intimidating media campaign today, he can just look at that terrified kid and calibrate his perspective.
And that calibration involves a practice known in therapeutic circles as reparenting.
Reparenting. Okay, explain that a bit more.
So Álvaro does not view that photo as a static, dead memory. He treats that inner child as an active, living component of his current psyche. He acknowledges that beneath the suits and the strategy, adults are often just children managing really complex anxieties.
Right. Let's talk about the mechanics of that, because I think it is vital for you, the listener, to grasp this.
That's right.
When an entrepreneur faces a moment of deep insecurity, say a major investor backs out, the default internal monologue is usually brutal.
Oh, absolutely brutal.
We repeat the verbal abuse we might have heard growing up. We tell ourselves to snap out of it, stop being weak, get back to work.
But Álvaro utilizes the exact opposite mechanism. When his inner child acts up or feels that familiar wave of inadequacy, he does not employ discipline. He employs radical compassion.
Radical compassion. What does that look like in practice?
He mentally takes that child out for ice cream. He visualizes buying him the shoes he wants. He validates the emotion rather than attempting to crush it.
Wow. It's like technical debt in software engineering.
How do you mean?
Like, if you launch a massive platform but ignore the flawed, broken code at the foundation, eventually the whole system crashes under pressure.
Oh, for sure.
Alvaro is basically saying that unhealed childhood trauma is the ultimate psychological technical debt. You have to go back and patch the code with the compassion you were denied, or it will eventually sabotage your launch.
That is a highly accurate framework. By becoming his own Miss M.A. Angelo, he patches that code. He neutralizes the internal saboteur.
Which is a prerequisite for external resilience.
Exactly. Because even when your internal foundation is solid, the external world is still going to introduce severe, unpredictable friction.
Speaking of unpredictable friction, that brings us to a story from the source material that is as hilarious as it is profound. The cherry-picking disaster.
Yes. The cherry picking.
So, after proving he could survive the grueling work of picking honeydews, young Alvaro gets a job picking cherries. It's agriculture. It seems like a direct skill transfer.
You think so, right?
But he and his cousin lasted exactly half a day before being unceremoniously fired.
And the mechanics of the failure are really important here. He was fired because he was pulling the stems off the cherries as he picked them.
Which is bad.
It's terrible. In agricultural supply chains, if you remove the stem, the cherry rots almost immediately. It becomes completely unsellable.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was systematically destroying the inventory with every single movement.
For someone whose entire sense of worth was being built on his capacity for hard labor, getting fired by noon could have been a catastrophic blow to his identity.
And that is exactly how most professionals process a setback, isn't it? The immediate reaction is to internalize the failure as an indictment of character.
I am a failure.
Right. Or, alternatively, the ego defends itself through external blame. The foreman didn't train me properly, or the system is rigged.
But Alvaro manages a brilliant cognitive pivot here. He objectively analyzes the data. He concludes that the specific rhythm and technique required for cherry picking simply is not his forte.
Right. He separates himself from it.
Yeah, he completely separates his intrinsic value from the outcome of the task.
It is the crucial distinction between experiencing a failure and embodying a failure. Failures are merely data points. They are harsh, immediate feedback mechanisms indicating that a specific approach is flawed.
Right.
Because he did not internalize the rejection, he retained the momentum to pivot. He moved to drying fruit, then to managing soda cans at a packing plant, eventually navigating to Fresno State University, and finally building his media empire.
And the philosophical engine driving those pivots is a piece of advice he received from his father. It's a phrase that I really want to dissect deeply. His father told him, "En el camino se acomodan las calabazas." On the road, the pumpkins settle themselves in the wagon.
It is a phenomenal piece of agrarian wisdom applied to complex business strategy.
Okay, I have to push back on this, though.
Let's hear it.
Because when I first hear the pumpkins settle themselves, my immediate reaction is that it sounds incredibly passive.
Passive, really.
Yeah. If I am listening to this and my startup just lost its primary funding, or I just got passed over for a promotion, that advice sounds dangerously close to, just chill out, man. The universe will magically arrange your problems into a neat little pile. That contradicts everything we just said about taking ownership.
I see what you're saying, but it sounds passive only if you ignore the physics of the metaphor.
The physics.
Yeah, the pumpkins absolutely do not settle themselves if the wagon is parked safely in the barn. The settling mechanism requires friction. It requires the wagon to be in motion over uneven, rocky, uncomfortable terrain.
Ah, okay. The bumps in the road are the actual organizing mechanism.
Exactly. The kinetic energy of hitting a pothole is what causes the payload to shift.
Yeah.
You, as the entrepreneur, must keep driving the horses forward. Every time a contract falls through, every time a product launch fails, it jolts the wagon. And it is that precise jolt that forces the elements of your business to slide, adjust, and eventually lock into their most optimal, stable configuration.
Wow. That completely flips the paradigm. It means you cannot actively avoid the rough road because the rough road is the only thing doing the sorting.
Precisely.
If you sit down and cry about the bump, the wagon stops, the kinetic energy dies, and your problems just remain in a chaotic, unstable pile.
And this ties directly into Alvaro's mandate for leaders who feel paralyzed by recent setbacks. When the wagon hits a rut, the default, comfortable response is victimhood.
You just surrender the reins.
Yeah. You blame the macroeconomic environment, you blame the algorithm change, you blame the client's lack of vision.
Because, I mean, if it is their fault, My ego remains entirely intact. I don't have to change my product. The world just needs to get smarter.
But the moment you embrace victimhood, you surrender your locus of control. Álvaro insists that regardless of the external variables, you must maintain an internal locus of control.
You're still the captain.
Always. If the market shifts, you are still the captain of the ship. You have to absorb the blow and say, the conditions have changed. I am taking control of the resolution.
Right. You transition from being a passive victim of circumstance to being the active architect of the solution.
Exactly.
But, steering that ship or driving that wagon requires a crystal clear understanding of what you are actually delivering to the market.
Absolutely.
Because you can be the most resilient driver on Earth, but if your payload is useless, you are just resiliently driving toward bankruptcy.
Well said.
Which brings us to a massive shift in perspective that Álvaro outlines for building a personal brand or a business model.
Yes, he provides a highly specific framework designed to transition professionals out of commodity thinking. The core directive is to shift your focus entirely from selling services to selling results.
Okay, take his analogy of the dentist. I think it perfectly encapsulates the curse of knowledge.
So it really does.
A dentist spends over a decade studying the microscopic, highly technical mechanics of the human mouth. They master the tools, the anesthetics, the enamel. Consequently, when they launch their practice, their marketing naturally defaults to, I fix teeth.
And from the dentist's perspective, that is the most accurate description of their labor. But the consumer operates on an entirely different frequency.
Right.
The consumer is completely agnostic to the technical process. They do not want to purchase a drill bit, or an hour in a clinical chair, or a specific brand of resin.
The consumer is buying a transformation. Álvaro points out that the dentist needs to stop selling the procedure and start selling the Colgate smile.
Yes?
They need to sell the return of executive confidence for a manager who is terrified to speak in a boardroom because of a chipped tooth. Or, most powerfully, they need to sell the pure, unadulterated relief of being able to drink a glass of ice water without a compromised nerve screaming in agony.
And the distinction is vital. When you sell the mechanical service of fixing a tooth, you are competing on price. You are a commodity.
Anyone can fix a tooth.
Right. But when you sell the emotional and physical relief of drinking ice water without pain, you become a savior. You transition from a vendor to an indispensable partner.
It's the classic marketing axiom, right? People do not want a quarter-inch drill. They want a quarter-inch hole in the wall.
Exactly.
You, as the listener, have to ruthlessly audit your own career right now. Are you selling your boss your ability to format spreadsheets? Or are you selling them the peace of mind that the quarterly reports will be bulletproof? What is the specific hole in the wall you are uniquely positioned to provide?
And this is the exact strategy for building a powerful personal brand when you have zero initial resources. Beginners often assume branding requires massive capital, PR firms, slick aesthetics.
But it doesn't.
No, Álvaro argues that the only required capital is profound empathy.
Empathy is the budget.
Precisely. You must possess the cognitive flexibility to step completely outside of your own ego, ignore your pride and your technical skills, and deeply map the pain points of the person sitting across from you.
Right, because business is fundamentally an exchange of value.
You must intimately understand what the client values before you can extract value in return.
He applies this to the legal profession as well, right? When a client hires a defense attorney, they aren't actually buying the attorney's memorization of the penal code.
No, they are buying the ability to sleep through the night.
Yes. They are purchasing the removal of the crushing, suffocating anxiety of litigation.
But there is a dangerous trap in this pursuit of providing value. As you begin to map client pain points, the temptation is to offer solutions for everything.
Oh, the scope creep.
Exactly. Álvaro warns against this using a traditional proverb, El que a dos amos sirve, con uno queda mal. He who serves two masters will inevitably fail one.
It's like feature creep in software design. You launch a simple app to do one thing perfectly. Then you add a messaging feature to please one client and a calendar integration to please another, and suddenly the app is so bloated it crashes on launch.
It becomes useless.
In trying to be everything to everyone, you dilute your core utility.
And strategic dilution is the death of a brand. If you attempt to serve two distinct competing markets or solve completely unrelated problems, your operational focus shatters.
Right.
You lose the ability to reliably deliver that transformational Colgate smile because your resources are spread too thin. Building a resilient brand requires the discipline to identify your singular master and the courage to say no to everything else.
But here is the critical pivot of this entire deep dive. You cannot possess the empathy required to understand a client's pain, nor the discipline required to serve a single master if your internal operating system is in chaos.
So true.
You cannot architect a brand for the world if your internal dialogue is destroying your own foundation.
Which brings us to the daily mechanical habits of resilience. How does a person actively maintain the psychological stability required to execute these high-level strategies?
And he pulls from a surprising source for this, doesn't he?
Yes, Álvaro draws inspiration from a highly unexpected source to engineer his daily self-talk, Mr. Rogers.
Fred Rogers. It's brilliant. Álvaro watched Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood as a child, and he observed a specific cinematic technique.
What was it?
The show would frequently frame Mr. Rogers looking directly into the camera, affirming the viewer. But occasionally, the camera would reveal that Mr. Rogers was actually looking into a mirror, speaking kindly to his own reflection, validating his own worth before turning his attention to the audience.
It is a profound demonstration of emotional intelligence disguised as children's programming.
Really is.
Álvaro internalized this and transformed it into a rigid daily practice. He physically stands in front of a mirror and verbally affirms himself. He vocalizes the specific phrasing. How beautiful I am, how I love myself.
If you are listening to this on your commute or at the gym, I want you to genuinely imagine doing that tomorrow morning. Stand in front of your bathroom mirror, look yourself in the eyes, and loudly declare, "I am beautiful and I love myself."
It's hard to do.
For the vast majority of us, that triggers an immediate wave of intense discomfort, cynicism, or even embarrassment.
And the discomfort arises because the exercise directly attacks heavily reinforced neural pathways. When the average professional looks in a mirror, the brain automatically initiates a critical scan.
We're looking for what's wrong.
We look for defects. The shirt is wrinkled, the eyes look exhausted, the physical signs of aging are apparent. We are merciless auditors of our own flaws.
Right.
Forcing the brain to bypass the critical scan and output genuine affection feels unnatural because it is unpracticed.
We treat ourselves with a level of disrespect we would never tolerate from a stranger. And this introduces the most devastatingly accurate analogy of the entire interview. Álvaro calls it the compadre analogy.
Oh, this one is so good. It perfectly illustrates the hypocrisy of our internal commitments.
Okay, here's the scenario. Imagine your compadre, your absolute best friend, someone you respect, deeply calls you at 9:00 p.m. He says, "I'm in a massive bind. I have a critical flight tomorrow morning. My car broke down, and I need a ride to the airport at 4 a.m. Can you do it?"
For almost anyone, the response is immediate and affirmative.
Absolutely. You don't hesitate. You set your alarm for 3:15 a.m. You lay your clothes out on the chair so you don't wake up your spouse. You pre-program the coffee maker.
Yep.
When that alarm violently goes off in the pitch black, you are exhausted, but you do not negotiate. You get up, you get in the car, and you drive to the airport because you made a promise to someone you respect.
Now, hold that exact scenario, but change the beneficiary. You tell yourself, tomorrow I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. to work out, or I'm going to wake up early to finalize the business plan for my new venture.
You make a promise to yourself.
You make a solemn promise to your own future. The alarm goes off at 5 a.m. What is the immediate physiological response?
You smash the snooze button into oblivion. I'll start tomorrow. I need the sleep. 1 more hour won't kill the business.
Exactly. The betrayal is instantaneous. Álvaro's observation here is piercing. We extend unyielding, unquestioning reliability to an external friend, but we treat our own goals, our own health, and our own ambitions as highly negotiable options.
It's like fiduciary duty in finance. By law, a financial broker has to put the client's interests above their own. Álvaro is basically demanding that we sign a binding fiduciary agreement with our own potential.
I love that.
Why are you willing to be a fiduciary for your compadre's airport run, but you commit malpractice against your own life?
To correct this imbalance, Álvaro adopted the principles of the 5 a.m. Club. His specific inspiration was an anecdote about an 80-year-old man who possessed extraordinary vitality and mental clarity.
What was his secret?
The man's foundational secret was that he sequestered the very first hour of his day entirely for himself. Before the external world could extract any value from him, before the emails, the crises, the family demands, he dedicated an hour to his own physical and mental fortification.
And Álvaro details the friction of this practice, right? Getting up to run when it is pouring rain, when the bed feels like a gravitational anomaly just holding you down.
Yeah, but the purpose isn't just cardiovascular health. The purpose is the psychological victory of choosing yourself first.
It is the systemic construction of self-efficacy.
Exactly. Every single time you execute on a promise you made to yourself, you cast a definitive vote for your identity as a reliable, formidable individual. You prove to your subconscious that your directives matter.
Right?
This continuous loop of keeping promises to yourself is the mechanism behind what Alvaro calls desaprender, or unlearning.
Unlearning. That is a fascinating linguistic choice. In the corporate space, we are obsessed with acquisition. Learning new coding languages, learning new management frameworks, learning new marketing funnels.
We just want to add more.
But Alvaro argues that acquisition is useless if you don't first create capacity by unlearning.
You cannot install high-performance software on a corrupted hard drive.
Right.
You must actively unlearn the narrative that you are a burro. You must unlearn the instinct that failure is an indictment of your character. You must unlearn the deeply ingrained habit of hitting the snooze button on your own ambition.
And that takes work.
It requires identifying the specific limiting belief, interrupting the cognitive pattern when it triggers, and forcefully replacing it with a new protocol.
And once you have executed that process, once you have audited your history, learned to separate your identity from the cherry-picking failures, map the transformational result you provide to the market, and sign a fiduciary agreement with your own alarm clock, you are finally equipped for the ultimate task.
You are ready to architect your purpose.
Yes.
Alvaro's articulation of his own purpose is highly instructive here. He does not define his purpose by his job title. He does not say, my purpose is to be a multimedia strategist.
Because a job title is merely a temporary vehicle.
Exactly. He defines himself as a machine of creation.
A machine of creation, that is expansive.
He views himself as a conduit. His function is to synthesize knowledge, to transform dependence into independent operators teaching people to fish rather than distributing fish, and to systematically elevate his community.
So it's a purpose that exists completely independent of whatever corporate logo happens to be on his paycheck. Based on the entirety of the source material, we can actually extract a clear sequential architecture for how the listener can construct this exact kind of mission statement for themselves.
It is not something you casually stumble upon. It is something you actively engineer.
Okay, let's break down those steps. The first phase of this architecture is to investigate your joy. It requires historical excavation.
Like Alvaro analyzing his childhood connection to Mr. Rogers.
Exactly. You must look backward. What were the raw, unmonetized activities that provided you with genuine energy before the market dictated what you should care about?
That's powerful.
The foundational material of your adult purpose is almost always buried in the uncorrupted interests of your youth.
And the second phase is critical. Unlink your value from your circumstances. This is the integration of the cherry-picking lesson.
Right, because if you tie your ultimate purpose to a volatile external metric, like achieving a specific valuation or getting a promotion at a specific firm, you are building on a fault line.
The ground could shift at any time.
If the market crashes and you lose the business, your entire reason for existing shatters. An architected purpose must be intrinsic. If your purpose is to elevate others, you can execute that, whether you are a CEO or a line cook. It survives external devastation.
Phase 3 transitions from the internal to the external. Define the result. This is the application of the dentist analogy.
The Colgate smile.
Right. Once you understand your intrinsic joy and have secured your internal value, you must determine how that translates into a transformation for the world.
You have to ask, what is the specific glass of ice water without pain that your unique combination of skills and history allows you to provide?
Because a purpose is only functional when it intersects with the friction of the real world.
Which leads directly into the fourth and final phase. Embrace the uncomfortable.
This is where most people quit.
If your drafted mission statement allows you to operate entirely within the boundaries of your current comfort zone, it is fundamentally flawed. It is too small.
Alvaro's spent years hiding behind the camera because he was paralyzed by the fear that he stuttered, that he lacked the polish to be on screen.
But his purpose to be a machine of creation and disseminate knowledge eventually demanded that he step into the very environment that terrified him.
And the presence of fear is not an indicator that you are on the wrong path. It is the friction required to prove the path is elevating you.
The discomfort of stepping in front of the camera was the exact jolt the wagon needed for the pumpkins to settle.
Exactly.
I love how seamlessly these concepts interlock. If you synthesize all of this, your purpose isn't some mystical epiphany waiting to strike you. It is a deliberate structural engineering project.
Brick by brick.
You are laying the foundation with the uncorrupted joys of your past. You are pouring the concrete with the psychological resilience of your healed traumas. And you are framing the walls with the specific transformational problems you have chosen to solve for the market.
And it requires the profound empathy to accurately map the needs of your clients, the relentless discipline to keep the promises you make to yourself at 5 a.m., and the unyielding resilience to keep the wagon moving forward when the road threatens to break the axles.
We have dissected a massive amount of strategy today. I mean, we trace the trajectory from the brutal, exhausting reality of agricultural labor in Fresno all the way to the sophisticated architecture of multimedia branding.
It's quite a journey.
We have proven that the most efficient way to project authority in a boardroom is not to hide the terrified kid with the crooked teeth, but to keep him in your pocket and actively validate him.
It is a comprehensive operational manual for navigating the muddy waters of professional ambition without sacrificing your psychological integrity in the process.
So, as we close out this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final, highly tactical question to audit your own life, something to dissect long after the audio stops.
Let's hear it.
Think back to Alvaro getting unceremoniously fired from the cherry orchard on his very first day. He thought it was the logical next step, but he was fundamentally incompatible with the task.
Yeah.
Ask yourself right now, what is the cherry-picking initiative, relationship, or mindset in your current portfolio? What is the project you are desperately clinging to out of stubbornness, all while secretly pulling the stems off and rotting the harvest every single day?
That is a tough question to face.
What do you desperately need to give yourself permission to be fired from so that you can finally pivot, load your wagon, and begin architecting your true legacy?
Wow.
We would like to thank Maria Romo for the invitation to her podcast. You can find her as @MundaRomo. This has been the Deep Dive Wisdom for your day. For more knowledge, like, follow, and subscribe. And it is done.